If noble lords don't object, I'd like to speak now in this group rather than later, because I did agree with the noble Lord Ravensdale before committee, having read his amendment, that it would be sensible if we grouped these two amendments together, because we're both trying to get at the same thing. And in a sense, what I'm going to say is I'm not going to say something very different to what he said, but I am going to take a different approach to it, because both of us want to limit, I think it's fair to say, or at least to know what limits the government is going to put on itself when it comes to deploying these subsidies, these contracts. So as the noble Lord Ravensdale said, if you turn to clause 16, sustainable aviation fuel means aviation fuel that is renewable transport fuel. And a little bit earlier up the page, renewable transport fuel means anything that is or is treated as renewable transport fuel for the purposes of Chapter 5 of Part 2 of the Energy Act 2004, which the noble Lord played a certain part in amending in 2023. So if one turns to that Act in its current amended version, what one sees is that renewable transport fuel could include biofuel. And here I rather regret that the noble Baroness Lady Jones of Moulscombe isn't here, because I think her comments about deforestation would have fitted in very well at this point. Blended biofuel, any solid, liquid or gaseous fuel other than fossil fuel or nuclear fuel produced wholly by energy from a renewable source or wholly by a process powered wholly by such energy, and any fuel designated by an RTF order as renewable transport fuel. So this is an astonishingly wide list, and as I read it, could include heifer. So the approach I've taken in my amendment is to try to work out what the government intends to do from this very wide list by, so to speak, knocking out the options. I'm saying knock out heifer. What happens if you knock out heifer? What does the government say to that? And the noble Lord Ravensdale is saying knock out biofuels and see what the government says to that. But the purpose that both of us have is to try and find out, well, to ask the question, why are we giving the government this astonishing range when the government says they don't need it, they don't want it, and when, my lords, we don't want it either? That is the first question. Why are we giving the government this great range? And secondly, assuming we do give the government this great range, what is it they actually intend to do with it? Because we'd be very disturbed if we heard certain things, but we'd be more placated if we heard others. And how do we hold government to account on that? And that's really what these two amendments are about. And I think it's a very important subject, because we've already complained, if you like, the government as being given a great latitude on the design of the levy without very much, or indeed any, parliamentary scrutiny beyond the affirmative procedure that will arise later. And here we're giving them, and maybe not wittingly, but we are giving them a huge range in what they might choose to subsidise. This could be and should be narrowed, but in the meantime, let us hear what the noble Lord the Minister has to say to the noble Lord Ravensdale and myself about these two amendments. Thank you for giving way on